In the past 2 years, Israel started a new policy in terms of Palestinian detainees, together with the Israel Prison Service under the supervision of Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir. Also, the Israeli military started a policy of punishments through conditions, meaning that denying one's liberty is not enough, and holding them in prison, but also punishing them through the conditions. And what we see all across the board, in all detention facilities and prisons where Palestinian detainees are being held, is a policy of torture, of denial of medical care, and starvation, all across the board. And as a result, also Palestinians were killed in prison. Let me start with saying that the number 98 is the highest numbers that is known so far, and it's unprecedented. It's more than the number of deaths of Palestinians in the past decade, but we believe that the actual number is much higher. And this is due to the policy of enforced disappearance that Israel is applying against Palestinians from Gaza. From the information that we gathered through testimonies, autopsies, and going over medical files of Palestinian detainees, many cases were due to denial of medical care, and there were clear cases where people were beaten to death, were simply killed in prison. Because of this policy, it's very hard to know the number, but we know that there are thousands of Palestinians from Gaza who are still missing. There are accounts and testimonies of hundreds of people saying that they saw this and that person being taken from their homes or from the street and other places. People were used as human shields. And in terms of the policy, until in the first 7 months after the genocide started, we couldn't get any information of the whereabouts of Palestinians detained from Gaza, not where they're being held, not if they're dead or alive. After 7 months and after several appeals that the Israeli court also back up the state, saying that they don't have obligation to provide information about their whereabouts. After 7 months, the Israeli court held the first hearing, and 2 days before we received an email address from the Israeli military saying we can find out through this email address about the whereabouts of Palestinians from Gaza and to coordinate an appointment. But what we saw after that is a continuation of the policy of enforced disappearance. Another organization, Hamoked, recorded 400 cases of answers from this email address that there is no indication for the detention of this person, even in very clear cases. We received this response when we asked about Dr. Hussam Abu Safieh, and it was a detention that was very well documented. There was another case of father and son from El-Fakawi family in Gaza. The Israeli army claimed that there is no indication for their arrest, even though they were taken from their homes in front of the family members, and there was another person who was detained with them, and they were used as human shields. And only after an appeal to the Supreme Court, after several months, with the testimony of the person that was held with them and was released, finally the Israeli military said that they were detained and they died in custody. And many of them are being held, Israel is holding Palestinians from Gaza under the unlawful combatant law, which is another form of administrative detention. They are being held while they are not charged based on unknown information. And Israel started applying that already for Lebanese detainees as a bargaining chip for potential ceasefire agreement. I would say that it's definitely sexual assaults, and inside of it, rape is part of the way that Israel is torturing Palestinians in prison. It's something that is happening all across the board, and it became part of the humiliation and dehumanizations that Palestinians are going through in Israeli custody. But we know of several other cases of sexual assaults that happen in prison that nobody was indicted for, and not to speak of charge or being covered in the Israeli media. You know, they weren't indicted for rape, even though it was rape. They weren't indicted for rape. They were indicted for severe injury. So Israeli investigation could help them and prevent them from being investigated abroad. But yet the Israeli authorities, they are against also Israeli investigations. And this is also why we are calling for international accountability for all those cases. And the Israeli public is just not interested in Palestinian detainees. The level of dehumanization is so high, they don't mind that people are being killed in prison or being raped in prison. We are calling for international accountability. We think that it has to happen, and immediately, to stop these policies, harmful and horrifying policies. Many families, they don't know that their relatives were killed in prison. They don't know what happened to them. And we saw, and that's the last part of the report, the cover-ups by the Israeli authorities. Even in very, very clear cases where there were severe signs of violence and very clear indications for medical neglect, we don't know of any soldier, physician, or prison guard that was indicted for any of the death cases. I would say that, we say it's a systemic killing because it happened all across the board and in all detention facilities where Palestinians are being held, and it didn't stop only in the past months, 4 Palestinians died in Israeli prisons.